Good morning, friends! Welcome back to biology class, and today our topic is 6.1 water and ion uptake. So before we get into today's learning objective, I hope that you guys are ready with your Cornell notes, but if you're not, it's okay, because I'm going to show you guys a little bit of my morning routine while we are at home right now. I hope you guys enjoy it. Good morning, guys. So today I'm going to show you guys how I take care of my plants, which I don't do most of the time. Hello to my mint plant. This is my favorite, the chocolate mint. And when we're watering our plants, we usually water from the bottom here. Sometimes you can kind of sprinkle a little bit like at the top. But when we water our plants, we don't water them at the leaves. It doesn't work that way. Why is that? Haven't you ever wondered why we can't have water being absorbed at the leaves? But instead, there's some cells that are found inside or underneath the soil that actually absorbs the water. And I can see these leaves right here, and they're not looking that great. This one right here, you can see that it's yellowing already, and some parts have died. And I think you can make a guess of which nutrient that this plant is actually lacking. So here's my organic fertilizer, and you can see that it contains those nutrients: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and calcium. Do you guys remember which group of nutrients do these nutrients belong to? It starts with the letter M. I hope you guys remember. Stands for minerals. So what we need to do is, so these organic fertilizers, you kind of just like put them at the side, and I do like to add my water. I have my teacup here because I'm so lazy to get like, oh yeah, I actually have that. I forgot about that, but I prepared this earlier, and I kind of just like put the water right there. The reason being is to dissolve those NPKs, the nutrients, the minerals, so that it can go into the soil. Okay, so are your Cornell notes ready? If your Cornell notes are not ready, you can pause this video right now and prepare it. So our learning objective of today has something to do with my video, and our main character of the day is actually our friend called the root hair cells. So it's 6A, relate the structure and function of the root hairs to their surface area and to water and ion uptake. So what is our step to success today? How are we going to achieve that objective? Firstly, you have to be able to state what is actually the structure of the root hair cell, and you have to pretty much recognize how it looks like and what is special about it. Secondly, you should be able to state the function of the root hair cell. Once you guys know what is the function, then you can finally relate how the structure is actually adapted to its function. Okay, so we actually have seen this video in school before. I hope you guys remember. This is a seedling that is germinating, therefore it is growing, and it's already growing its radicle, which is the root, the young root that is coming out. And especially if you guys can focus on that part right there, that they have little hairs that are sticking out, that is part of the root hair cell. So when the seedling is actually growing, you guys can see over here the seed coat is moving out. You have your plumule, and mainly the seed now is trying to make it some food as well, so it really needs to get into the soil. And to get into the soil, you can see that the taproot is actually moving in between the soil particles, and even more so, they are developing root hair cells that's actually going further, trying to get closer to the soil. So let's do a bit of a recap. So the plant itself, you know that a plant is an organism and they have systems as well. So let's recall what a system is. A system is when you have different organs that come together to perform a function. The plant is an organism, so the leaves itself, these are organs, and these parts like the root, that's an organ for the plant. So we have the shoot system, which is in charge of basically photosynthesis, and we also have the root system, which has the main function to provide water and nutrients for the shoot system. Today we are going to mainly focus on the root system itself, which is made up of basically these three types of parts. You have the main part, which is the root, and on the root itself they have the root hair cells, and inside the root they also have the xylem vessels, but we are just going to look into root hair cells for today. So what is this root hair cell and what is their structure and function? Okay, root hair cell itself is actually a specialized root epidermal cell. So if you guys remember what specialized cells are, they are the type of cells that have gained or lost certain features so that they can be adapted to their function. And if you guys have a look at these two pictures, those parts right there that has the part sticking out. So the part sticking out is the root hair, and actually over here, it's a better picture that you can compare. So the epidermis of the root, they're basically the type of cells that are found on the outermost layer. They're called the epidermal layer. So these are the normal epidermis cell, and they are kind of like roundish, small, and you have the root hair, so actually have that protrusion right there, like going out. So that is why we call them a specialized cell, because they are different from some of the other cells. What is the function of the root hair cell that makes them so special? So why they gained that part, that very special look, is because their main function is to absorb water and mineral ions, aka mineral salts, from the soil. So this is basically something that you guys just have to memorize, and it's not that hard to memorize. They literally just absorb two main things. And minerals, there are two main minerals that you have to remember for your O levels. The first one is nitrate ions, because plants need the nitrogen in the form of nitrates to make amino acids, and they also need magnesium ion. So this funky guy right here is actually a picture, a molecule, a chlorophyll molecule, and if you guys can see in the middle right there, that green color thing right there, that's a magnesium ion, and it forms the central atom of the whole chlorophyll molecule. So it's very important. Magnesium ions are important to make the chlorophyll that is in charge of absorbing light for photosynthesis. So without magnesium, the plants won't be able to make enough chlorophyll. Alright, so let's get into the structure of the root hair cell now. So the specialized structure, very simple, is that basically they have a long and narrow root hair. So this is a typical drawing of a root hair cell, and which part is this root hair is just this part, the one that's sticking out, that is called the root hair. And that's why we say long and narrow, because it is long and narrow, as in like the distance right there is narrow. Alright, so this part I'm just going to get into the detail of the root hair cell just to clarify some certain parts, because some people might not realize that the plant cells, they actually have very distinct two layers of them, so I'm going to explain it to you now. So this gray part right here, it's very thick, isn't it? So this thick outermost layer, you guys know that that is the cell wall. And if you guys can see that there's that red line right there, that, of course, you would know that's a cell membrane. However, usually when we're drawing it, we just draw them as a single line. But I'm just showing this to you I colored it differently so that you can realize the fact that the cell membrane and the cell wall here, they are touching each other, and that only happens when we have the plant cell being turgid. That means that the vacuole has a lot of water, so you have pressure pushing the cell membrane to touch the cell wall. Okay, so the cell membrane is the membrane that surrounds the cytoplasm, which is the inside part of the cell, jelly-like fluid. And you have right there, that should be the nucleus. The nucleus of the plant cells, usually we draw them kind of at the side because you have something in the middle right here that is pushing everything to the side. This is the vacuole. And usually, so why the root hair cell has that root hair part is because it is so narrow that it can go in between soil particles. And in the soil particles as well, it's actually, they are solid, aren't they? Solid soil. And they have this layer of moisture, aka the water film, that surrounds the soil particles, and that is what the root hair part is trying to get in contact with. Alright, so what is inside the soil? So inside the soil, you know that you have this water film. So that is basically water molecules right there that this root hair cell needs to absorb. And what is dissolved inside the water film are actually ions, for example, magnesium ions and nitrate ions. So I just drew the letter N right here to represent the nitrate ions, because nitrogen is what they want. However, the plants all absorb and they get their nitrogen in the form of nitrate. So I hope you guys can kind of relate those two together. And if you realize that there are some spaces right here in between the soil particles, and these are actually air space, and in the air space we have oxygen gas that is very important for the root hair cell and the other cells that are in the root. Okay, so what can we find in the soil? Just as a summary, we can find water. So the water film, we can find minerals that are dissolved inside the water film, and also oxygen in the air spaces in between the soil particles. Okay, the root hair cell is a living cell. Therefore, all living cells would definitely have these structures right here. If you guys remember, I always say these structures, you draw them like a sausage shape, and like you have sauce in the middle. And they are in charge of giving all the cells releasing energy, and so these are called the mitochondria. So root hair cells also have tons of mitochondria. They're very important. We're going to talk about why they have a lot of them. But firstly, just so you know and remember the fact that all living cells would have mitochondria. But in O levels, you don't draw these because you don't get into that much detail. However, you should know that they exist and they are present. Alright, so what's inside the vacuole? So this right here in the middle is the vacuole. The vacuole even extends. So that extension in the root hair itself, it also has a vacuole right there. What's inside it? So the vacuole's main function, it is an organelle that stores water and minerals that the plants need. So all the cells need, the plant cells need. So this is a fact that you have to remember as well. The vacuole itself contains lower concentration of water molecules than the soil. So that's why I drew just a little bit. I copy and pasted just a little bit of water compared to the outside. So maybe some of you guys might be wondering, why would they have lower concentration if they're absorbing so much? Like, that's their main job. Like, they have one job. Okay, no, they have two jobs, but one of their jobs is to absorb water. If you guys remember, water is actually going to be sent to the leaves. The xylem vessels are the ones that are going to send it, transport it to the leaves. However, the root hair cells, their main job is to absorb, to get in. But in the end, water molecules are going to be sent to the leaves and they're going to be used up during photosynthesis. So therefore, we're always having less water molecules that are found in concentration, low concentration inside the vacuole. However, because the plant cells always require minerals, they do store a lot of minerals as compared to in the soil. The soil actually lacks minerals as compared to what can be found inside the vacuole. So the vacuole has higher concentration of minerals than the soil. Okay, so how do they absorb the water first? So water actually enters the root hair cell via diffusion and osmosis. So there are two pathways here. So because there's lower water concentration in the vacuole compared to the soil, firstly, we have the cell wall pathway. So what happens is that water will actually enter the cell wall via diffusion. This is because the cell wall is fully permeable. And then finally, so now the second pathway, so the first one is diffusion, so that is only until the cell wall, but after that they enter the vacuole over here through the vacuolar pathway via osmosis. This is because the cell membrane, this red part right here, is a semi-permeable membrane. And to explain this, you have to also mention the fact that instead of using concentration, we do prefer to say lower water potential. So there's higher water potential outside than inside the vacuole. Therefore, this water molecule will now enter the semi-permeable membrane via osmosis, and it's going to be stored in the vacuole. All right, but what about the minerals? So there's actually a lot more other minerals that the cells do need, but we're going to focus mainly on magnesium and nitrates here. Okay, so minerals actually just enter via one type of process, which is active transport. Okay, by fact, you should know that there's higher mineral concentration inside the vacuole as compared to the soil. That means that the soil does lack mineral as compared to what can be found in the vacuole. So you have this difference in concentration gradient, and these minerals actually have to enter the region over here. So it has to go against a concentration gradient. Therefore, we need a little bit of help to bring them against a concentration gradient. And that's where these mitochondria is very important. Root hairs have a lot of mitochondria because they provide energy, a lot of energy that is needed to move minerals against a concentration gradient. And how they do this is that the energies are released from respiration, and the reason being to carry out active transport. So these minerals will enter via active transport after having energy being applied. All right. So let's do a bit of a summary-ish. Okay, not really, not a summary. Actually, we're going to go through the adaptation first. Okay, so we know that the root hair itself is the special part of the root hair cell. And the root hair is long, so you have to say how they're adapted. Firstly, it is long. And why is it special? Why does it need to be long? It's so that it can be able to penetrate between the soil to be in close contact with the water film. Secondly, being long also greatly increases surface area of the cell available for uptake of water and ions and oxygen that is necessary for respiration of all the cells in the root. Okay, so surface area, when we talk about surface area, it means that so if the root hair cell itself doesn't have this extension, imagine that the surface that it has is only a little bit. It would have like shorter surface, but having that extension means that they have bigger surface, more surface, so that all of these stuff like water can actually enter here as well. That's what we mean by increasing surface area. Okay, the second thing is the fact that the root hair cell is narrow. Sorry, I don't know what's wrong with my pronunciation today. Okay, so what we mean by narrow here is this right here. Narrow means that the width is very small. Okay, and the reason being is that this reduces the distance across which water and minerals must move. So that means that we're going to have faster absorption of water and minerals, having that narrow gap right there. Okay, finally, kind of to summarize the whole point, we're going back to our step to success. So the first one, state the structure of the root hair cell. Like I hope you guys remember this, that the root hair cell is literally just long and narrow, that it has a long and narrow root hair. Okay, remember that this part is the root hair and that is the special part. Okay, secondly, state the function of the root hair cell, and it is to absorb water and mineral salts. And if you want to mention, you can mention a bit of extra, is that it also absorbs oxygen, but remember to always mention water and mineral salts. Alright, finally we're going to go back to our final S2S, which is to relate how the structure is adapted to its function. So remember that the structure of the root hair cell is the fact that you have a very long and narrow root hair, and the adaptations you have that is related to this, firstly, it's close contact to soil water, secondly, to increase surface area for absorption, and thirdly, to reduce diffusion distance. So how do we relate these adaptations to their structure? So the long root hair part actually helps the root hair to get close contact to soil water so that they can absorb the water and the minerals that are actually dissolved in the soil water. Secondly, being long also increases the surface area for absorption of minerals and water. Lastly, about it being narrow is that it helps to reduce the diffusion distance. That means you can have faster absorption of water and minerals. Okay, so pretty much we have talked about the structure and the functions and how it is related to water and ion uptake, and that is pretty much the end of our lesson for today. So have a good day, everybody. Stay safe. Bye.